It's against the law.
Ma'am, can I see your sign?
There's no one to bring sign.
Got signs on their shirts. It's a sign. Sign, sign, everywhere a sign. Where's the sign? Constitutional. You guys rented the building. Apparently I can't yet.
Thank you.
Darcy Rolfe. And Darcy, are you here as an individual or with a group?
I'm here as an individual.
Oh, great. And I noticed you have a sign with you and that you were asked to leave the town hall with your sign.
I was asked repeatedly to leave, although they changed their mind so I could stay, as long as I did the positive sign that says I miss Jim Oberstar. But then they decided that wasn't okay either, and that any sign had to leave. Although people are wearing signs on their shirts, and it's still a sign, but apparently if you hold it, then it's not okay anymore.
So if you wore it, it would be
If
okay?
I wore it, it would be okay, and that's just according to Chip Cravaak's rules.
Chip
Because they
Cravaak's
rented the room.
Oh, they rented the room.
So they can make the
Okay.
rules.
Okay. Thank you. And you missed Representative Oberstar. What is it that you miss, and what can you tell me about your concerns about Representative Cravaak?
Jim Oberstar listened to the people. He's
Marilyn.
public service employees, for which I am one of. And Chip Cravaak is for the money, by the money. When he ran for office, he claimed to be a moderate. He is as Tea Party as they get. And I don't approve of how he has voted. He's voted against Planned Parenthood. He has voted to shut down the government, the federal government. And he has voted for the uber wealthy to stay incredibly wealthy while taxing the middle class.
Tell me a little bit more about what he said when he was running versus what has happened.
Chip Cravaak, when he ran, he told the people that he was an airlines union member and that he too had walked a picket line. And now you can clearly see by his voting record that the middle class and the union are that he votes against every chance he can get.
How about his stand on the environment? How do you feel about that? Let's see, let me hear. Okay, want to hold it up and explain it to me? Think of it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, explain this sign to me, but let's have you go over here where the light is right. That's what I goofed up on the first one. You're lucky you're getting better light. Okay.
There is a few seats back over in this back corner here for anybody that would like to come and get a seat. We're going to get going here in just a minute, so if everyone could come in, find a spot. Most kind of crowded here today, but as best you Good afternoon. My name is Tim Olson. I manage Congressman Cravaak's office here in Duluth. Thank everybody for coming here today at this town hall meeting. Before we get started, can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? pledge allegiance Thank you. Representative Cravaak wants to hear from you, and you will have that opportunity. I'm happy to have some of the MoveOn.org people here today to join us this afternoon. They probably won't agree with everything we have to say, but I ask that you be respectful and to wait for your questions and as the Congressman answers them, please. Before I introduce the Congressman, and for everyone to have a productive meeting and a meaningful discussion, we need to establish some procedures that will help ensure people can hear what is being said and so we can have an orderly exchange of ideas. Please take note of some of the handouts that are on your chairs. One of the handouts shows some of the legislation that Representative Cravaak has introduced and supports. On the back, you will find a list of the Congressman's offices and contact information for those locations. The Congressman will begin with a PowerPoint presentation. Then he will take questions from the audience. There will be a staff member with a microphone in the back of the room. He'll be right over behind me. His name is Sheldon Anderson, the district director. If you want to ask a question, please form a line behind the microphone. When it is your turn, please identify yourself and speak clearly so everyone can hear the question. Please, just one question at a time so that the Congressman can get to as many questions as possible. The Congressman will take questions until 5 o'clock today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce Congressman Chip Cravaak.
Well, good afternoon. How are you all today? Good to hear. Good to be here. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to be here. And I know we have a lot of issues that we want to talk about, and that's why I'm here. So I appreciate you being here. As Tim kind of talked about, this is our 13th town hall. And unfortunately, what I've seen is they've become a little bit more and more civil as time goes on. So if we could please try to remain civil, respect each other's opinions, so we can hear each other and have a good dialogue between each other so I can get what you need me to hear. So please, if we can, make sure everybody, please don't argue among yourselves. If you want to hit me, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm an old Navy guy, I'm used to it. So please direct your comments to me. Let's not have conflict within the audience. And don't worry, I've gone that route too. He's good. How old is he? 3.5. Hey, big guy, how are you? Doing good? Welcome to the town hall. Okay, what we want to do is we're going to just kind of go through a real quick PowerPoint presentation. I'm really sorry that you all can't see it over here. I'll try to explain it a little bit. But what we're going to do is just kind of take a look how we're here, how we got here. I've been in office for 8 months, and I've learned a lot through these 8 months, and I want to share what I've learned over the last 8 months, kind of share it with you. We're going to take a look at the overall budget right off the bat. As soon as I was sworn in, first thing we hit, the government was out of money. So we had to talk about CRs, continuing resolutions, and how we're going to fund the government. So let's take a look at how the government's funded. Right now, $3.5 trillion budget for 2010. $1.6 trillion of that $3.5 trillion is borrowed money. We've had to borrow from foreign countries and ourselves. About 60% of this portion of this pie right here is called mandated spending. It's on autopilot. Congress really doesn't do anything with it. If you qualify for Social Security, you're going to get it. If you qualify for Medicare, you're going to get it. If you qualify for Medicaid, it's yours. This portion here, I'd like you to take just a quick look at, just kind of put it in the back of your head for a second. It's called the interest that we pay on our debt. This is an important part of this pie right now. Other mandatory spending is in like subsidies, children's lunches, things along that. That's all a portion of this mandated spending. Congress really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's on autopilot. The portions that we do have something to do with, and that's what a lot of the hoo-yah was about at the beginning of the year, was this discretionary spending, both in defense and non-defense. Defense discretionary spending is about 20% of this pie, and it's just exactly what it is. Defense of our nation. Defense of the nation is an obligation, not an option, according to the Constitution. Non-defense discretionary spending. That's what it takes to run the government. That goes from everything from salaries to buildings, schools, you name it. It comes out of non-defense discretionary spending. So this is an overall portion of a general idea of what the United States government budget looks like. This is kind of a busy slide. We'll kind of break it down. This is what drives our debt. This is what we pay our money on, just a little bit different of a picture. This right here is projected revenue. And one of the things I want to explain, that these slides come either from Department of Treasury, Congressional Budget Office, Officer of OMB. These are not my slides. These are slides that are offered by Congress. First, this is the projected tax revenue. This is the projected revenue of what we take in, what we pay as taxes to the federal government. Social Security down here, Medicare is here, Medicare is here. Remember that other little portion of the pie, the 6% called interest? If you laid that right on top of Medicare, by 2025, those four portions of the budget take 100% of our revenue. That means everything else we are going to have to borrow. This little tick right here, that's the beginning of baby boomers starting to retire. We go from 40 million to 77 million in about 2.5 to 3 decades. So that's baby boomers starting to retire. You know, just kind of look at Social Security, kind of creeps up there. Kind of take a look at Medicaid, it's the same thing, starts creeping up there. The big jump is in Medicare. And one of the reasons that there is such a big jump in Medicare, quite frankly, is because of lobbyists. Lobbyists come in and they lobby Congress for how much a certain procedure will be. We'll just take a hip replacement. I have no idea how much this replacement costs, but we'll say it's $15,000. Well, lobbyists will come in and will say, you know what, Mr. Congressman, we think that it should be $20,000. We'd like you to write Medicare, get a couple of your buddies, and say it's going to be $20,000. That's what happens in trying to get Medicare costs increased. You don't see that down on Social Security. One of the reasons you don't, so what do people do with Social Security? You know, obviously they pay for the essentials, but they also, when you're retired, they like gardening, some golfing, hopefully. But you don't see too many lobbyists that come in for golfing or gardening. But you see a lot of lobbyists for Medicare, or for health care. So that's one of the reasons that we have this hard, big jump here in Medicare as more and more people retire. Here's some dates down here. According to the Congressional Budget Office, in 2020, if we do nothing with Medicare, in 2020, Medicare becomes insolvent. In 2020, if we do nothing. In 2025, we kind of talked about where the interest on the debt, that's the current interest on the debt, which is actually pretty low right now. We've just been downgraded. We have a very good possibility of that interest starting to become more and more part of that pie. So by 2025, again, 100% of our budget is going to be just those four things. That means we have to borrow for defense. We have to borrow for running our government. We have to borrow for salaries. We have to borrow for some of the subsidies for children's lunches, things along those lines. We have to borrow that from foreign countries. It's actually a question of sovereignty. We'll get into that a little later. In 2036, with doing nothing, Social Security becomes insolvent. As the Social Security trustees say, Social Security will cease to exist. In 2037, the actual Congressional Budget Office computers actually shut down because they cannot perceive an economy going forward. So that'll kind of give you a snapshot of what's in the future for our children if we don't do anything. If we don't take charge of our own responsibilities right now. You know, one of the other problems we're having with Social Security is a pay-go system, meaning current workers pay into a current program. current retirees take out of that program. That's Social Security. Now, in the past, what has happened, there's been a surplus. So by law, what happens to that surplus? It goes into the general revenue. 2010 is the first year that they've not been able to pay all of their revenue, all of the Social Security allocated. So what has happened is they've had to borrow back from the general revenue to make sure that those payments go out to our current Social Security members. The other thing you have to take a look at too, back in 1950, there were 16.5 people supporting every one retiree. When our children are our age, struggling with their own families, it's going to be 2.1 people that are going to be supporting one retiree. That's a heck of a lot to put on the back of our kids. Another thing I want to take a look at, this is from the Congressional Budget Office. These are projections of how the entitlement programs, the mandated spending is going to increase in the coming decade. Back in 1970, the autopilot spending was about 42%. 48% was for discretionary. In 2010, this is where we are today. It's roughly 60%, 38%. This is going to have projected mandated spending coming in the future. As you can see, the discretionary portion right up here in blue, that's infrastructure. Those are roads, those are bridges, those are military, that's our military. That's what's going to be left to defend the country and to keep the country moving forward. Again, if we do nothing. This is from the Congressional Budget Office, by the way. Here's a kind of a breakdown of Social Security and how it's moving forward, Medicare, and what's happening, remember, with the trust fund, allowing Medicare to continue. The red is the trust fund outlays, the green is the receipts, and the trust fund balance. As you can see in here, there is no balance. We've depleted it. Now the green, again, is the receipts, the intake. This is the outtake. So immediately in 2020, Medicare, like I said, becomes insolvent. It cannot pay its bills. One of the other things we want to find out is who holds our debt. It's important who holds our debt because it is actually a question of sovereignty. What happens when a business takes over and is controlling 51% of the business? They start telling that business what they can and cannot do. In 1990, only 5% of our debt was foreign owned. In 1970. 1990, 19% of our debt was foreign owned. Now let's take a look at today. 47% of our debt is owned by foreign entities. 29% of that 47% is controlled by China. That's a stark reality. In this, you can see the projection, the exponential growth moving into the future. This is what we're handing our kids. Right here. Projected out about another 20, 30 years. That's what we're handing our children. That's who's going to hold us. Let's take a breakdown of a dollar right now, just as we hear today. This is for those over here, it's a picture of a dollar. Just kind of break it down. 42% of that dollar is debt that we pay, that we have to borrow. Individual income is about 25%. Social insurance, retirement receipts about 21%. Other revenues about 5%, excise tax is about 2%, corporate income tax is about 5%. So for every dollar that we spend, we have to borrow from other countries and ourselves. For every dollar that we spend, we have to borrow. Let's take a look at the debt. This is a graph here. It's a percentage of GDP versus a timeline. Let's take a look at the history of our debt. What's happened in the past? This is World War II. It's about 100% debt to GDP ratio right now. The greatest generation fought a world war, saved the country. They also paid for it, the majority themselves. Yes, they did pay it for high taxes, a very temporary period. And yes, they borrowed it against themselves. We paid for it. And a lot of World War II who understand what I'm talking about. Bonds, any kind of collections. World War II, they fought it. They brought it back down again to a traditional average of about 19.9%. That's about the traditional average. Right now, we're up about 24% percentage of debt to GDP ratio. This is the projected debt. Again, this is by the CBO. This is projected debt in the future. This is what we're handing our children. Right here. When our children are our age, they'll be borrowing approximately $3 for every dollar they spend. That's the projection. Right? Economists tell us when you start getting to a 60% debt to GDP ratio, the caution lights should start coming on, saying you better do something, you better change course. When they get to 90%, that's the point of no return, where you have a spiraling economy and it's almost you can't pull back out of it. But this, when about 100% debt to GDP ratio about 2030, when our children are struggling with their families, this is what we're handing it to them if we do nothing. This is what will happen. The other side of this coin that nobody likes to talk about is the unfunded mandates. We can talk about that actually. The unfunded mandates. 99.4%. What the unfunded mandates are, which actually isn't a war, but the unfunded mandates are like Social Security, Medicare. What we're promising current workers today for their future. 99.4%. Look how it's exponentially climbing. This is what is going to happen for doing nothing. The $1 trillion. That's the unfunded mandate for today. What's it going to be like next time? This is the promises that are being made to us, workers. Our whole debt, our whole GDP, our whole economy is worth 14.65 trillion. This is a debt we'll never be able to pay. It's impossible.
Can you take a question?
No, ma'am, not yet. If you don't mind, it'll be later, okay? We can come back. Now, let me share some Congress that have been doing this for a while. This is Erskine Bowles. He's the co-chair of the President Obama's National Commission of Fiscal Responsibility and Reform. It's a bipartisan group that was trying to fix this. This is what they said. The debt is like a cancer. It's truly going to destroy the country from within. That's how I got involved. I was retired military, retired after 24 years. I was retired from Northwest Airlines, medical. And when I actually had the toughest job in the world, I was a stay-at-home dad. So when I was staying home, in the military, you kind of swallow your politics. You don't care who the commander-in-chief is. Whoever's the commander-in-chief is the commander-in-chief. They're the boss. But when I retired, and I stayed home, and I got a little bit more, politically savvy, started paying attention more than anything else, I saw the massive amount of debt that was going to be bestowed on my 2 young children. And I said, we cannot implode from within. I didn't defend the country for 24 years to allow us to do this to ourselves. So I believe what Erskine Bowles says. We are going to implode from within if we don't do something. This is Doug Elmendorf. He's the director of the Congressional Budget Office. A lot of these slides, what we're seeing today. U.S. fiscal policy is on an unsustainable path to the extent it cannot be solved by minor tinkering. We are going to have to be bold in moving forward. It's going to be tough. There's no question about that. It is going to be tough. But we've been through tougher scraps. And we can do this together. But we're going to have to do it together as Americans. Everybody now. Ben Bernanke, this is about as excited as Ben Bernanke gets here. Unless we as a nation take a strong commitment to fiscal responsibility in the longer run, we will have neither financial stability nor a healthy economic growth. His job isn't to tell us what to do. His job is to kind of guide us and tell us what the best course of guide us in the best course of action. And like I said, this is about as excited I think I've ever seen it. Yeah. This one's kind of particular too. This is Admiral Mike Mullen. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. When in committee, he was asked, Admiral, what keeps you up at night? What do you think is our chief threat to our national security? He didn't say the Chinese. He didn't say former Soviet Union or radical Islam. He didn't say Iran. What he did say was, I think the biggest threat we have to our national security is our debt. And this is why he said it. The amount of interest that we pay to the Chinese alone in 1 month, or in 1 week, just 1 week, and they only own 29% of our foreign-owned debt. In 1 week, they can purchase 3 Joint Strike Fighters and put 83 Tomahawk cruise missiles on their ships and their submarines. That's in 1 week time period. That kind of echoed the significance of the debt and the interest that we pay on. David Walker, he's a former GAO, Comptroller General. This kind of speaks to me as a father and of 2 children, 2 young boys. I'm third generation here, or second generation here in the States. My grandparents came over in the belly of a boat with nothing. My mother never completed high school because she came from basically an impoverished Italian family where she couldn't complete high school because she had to go back and take care of the younger kids so both of her parents could work. But she wanted me to step on her back to go higher. I want my children to do the same. But this is what he says, David Walker, about the next generation. So much of their money will be devoted to keeping the government afloat that they'll have relatively little for anything else in their life. Their homes will be smaller and drabber. There'll be less to spend for cars, vacations, dinners out, and big TV sets, all of which their parents took for granted. They'll still read about the consumer society and conspicuous consumption, but mainly in history texts. This is what he's saying about the future for our kids. That caught my eye, caught my concern as a father. We have a debt crisis, in my opinion, and what I've seen in my 8 months of Congress here. It's not because Washington taxes too little, but it's because Washington spends too much. Okay, we'll get into that. Hold on, please. Let me complete, and we'll talk. Hold on, man. Okay. Cut, cap, and balance bill. I voted for the cut, cap, and balance bill. I did not vote for the most recent budget bill because, quite frankly, it didn't solve the problem. It continued on with kicking the can down the road, and now at the end of the next decade, our debt will be now close to $23 trillion, which we'll be handing to our children. So the reason why I voted for the cut, cap, and balance bill under bipartisan support that went over to the Senate and unfortunately was tabled. It wasn't even allowed to be brought out for debate. They tabled it. Why I like this is because the media had a cut and of $111 million, which in the big scheme of things wasn't that much. $1 billion, it wasn't that much. But it brought the deficit spending to about $1 trillion. The cap put us on basically intervention for the next decade of the high 24% debt to GDP ratio, bringing it down back to that traditional 19.9%. And then the balance was to be able to send out to the states a balanced budget amendment. Cities must have a balanced budget amendment. States must have a balanced budget amendment, except for one. Counties must have a balanced budget amendment. The federal government does not have a balanced budget amendment. And guess what? I think all of us in here have a balanced budget amendment. We got to pay our bills, or guess what happens to us? We go to jail. The best way for our debt isn't to grow taxes. It's to grow the tax base. Tax base is growing jobs. That's what we need to do. We need to grow jobs. Right? We're good. I hope so. All right.
Iron the dog and pony. Let him finish.
Yeah, let him
Go on
finish.
for half an hour.
Let him do his thing.
As a matter of fact, I'm an additional fact. So at this time, what I'd like to do is, who's going to have the mic? Shelton? We're going to line up over here, have questions, and again, if I could just remind everybody. Thank you.
Anna,
Sorry?
Go get in the line.
It has line bill in it. It's kind of simple. All right, somebody just come on here. We have our first question here. Again, please, let's try to keep our debate civil. Let's listen to them. We want to hear, I need to hear their opinion. Okay? I have to hear it. That's why I'm here.
Again, let's limit it to one question. We only have about 35 minutes, so we want to get through as many people as we can.
Congressman Cravaak, my name is John Pegg. I'm a Marine Corps veteran from the early days of the Vietnam War. And I find alarmingly, while I share your concern for supporting a military and having a strong military, I find alarmingly absent from your analysis what we're spending on military, overall defense, and war. I think we need to in the room, and there are huge amounts that could be cut from defense spending. The Cato Institute identifies over $900 billion without affecting the efficacy of our armed forces. So I would ask, will you support cuts in defense spending? And I'm also equally concerned about the destruction of the infrastructure of the social system of our country because we're not supporting the people getting jobs and education, health.
Thank you for your service, but I will tell you, since you served, sir, the budget for the overall budget for military has been cut 5%. 5% spending. In the next decade for the war, war funding for the Congressional Budget Office is 3.7% of the overall budget. I've talked to troops. I've been very fortunate to be with Red Bulls, talking to them, talking to what they need. We've been at war for a couple decades now. Our gear is beat up, and we're sending our guys into harm's way, possibly not the best equipment. So I want to make sure that we send our troops with the best equipment and the best innovations that we can possibly do to support them. Now, excuse me, ma'am, I did vote for cutting spending, it was a tough pill for me to swallow. It's part of the cut, cap, and balance bill, which I voted for. There were two major components of that bill that was a compromise on my part of my principles. One of which gave the president $2.4 trillion unfettered. I didn't care about the next election. I wanted to solve the problem. So I understood that. I said, if that's what the president needs to pass this bill so we can solve the problem, I'll give the $2.4 trillion. The other tough pill for me to swallow was, even after talking to guys with the Red Bulls, talking to some people that I trust that are still in the military, $400 billion in cuts in our military. That was a tough pill for me to swallow. I have voted to cut military, but at the same time, I will protect the guys that are in harm's way to make sure that they have the right and proper equipment, and I will not apologize. What about well, go ahead, and we'll talk.
Representative Cravaak, my name is Chris Lane, and I'm a Duluthian, and I have more of a comment than a question, but it's probably going to be helpful for the people near the end of the line. I've contacted both your Duluth office and your Washington, D.C. office via phone. I was greeted by a very courteous staff member that took down my question related to you, and then in turn, I got a written letter with a response on both occasions. More importantly, I have a senior in high school who via your website got a hold of your office, and it was a time-sensitive piece of information. So the staff member both called our home phone and the cell phone and resolved that issue in a speedy manner for my son. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being available today. Thank you for your service to our country in the Navy, and presently now serving the Navy.
From Deer River. First, I would like to commend you on holding this town hall meeting and the other meetings that you've held, for listening to your constituents and not just the ones who are on your side. I appreciate your honesty when you're not informed about a topic, you've always asked for resources to find out about it. You don't try and bluff your way through something. And I'd like, yeah, that's pretty good. And I'd like to commend you for putting your family first. I know it was a hard decision for you to make, but family, it's a great sacrifice that your family has made already, and I'm glad that you have the courage that not all politicians have to put your family first. Question? That's all. One thing, I believe 49% of our population does not pay any federal tax. What happens when the wagon is full of people who don't pay tax and suddenly we have 30% of people paying taxes and they can't pull the wagon anymore?
Thanks, I appreciate it. Thanks for the input. The latest figures I have, 53% of Americans pay taxes. That means 47% don't pay taxes. Of the 53%, well, I'm talking about income tax, right? 53% of us pay taxes. Of the 53% that pay taxes, the top 50% pay 97.3% of the taxes. So your bottom 50% pay 2.7%. I think I got, yeah, here it is. Here's a graph right here, percentage of federal income paid 2008. The top, well, I can't see down here. The top 50% pay 97.3% of the taxes. Actually, the top 50% pay about 69.4%. But the top 50% pays 97.3% of the taxes. The top 10% pays 69.4% of the taxes. So, anyway.
Hello, Congressman. My name is Blair Gagne. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Duluth YMCA and the Executive Director of True North AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps has often been defined as the domestic Peace Corps. Here in Minnesota, we have the third highest number of AmeriCorps members of any state in the country. In your district, we have over 280 AmeriCorps members that are working with kids, helping them graduate on time and lower that achievement gap. The impact is huge. Would you be willing to meet with some of our people to talk about the impact of AmeriCorps prior to this next legislative session and before you vote on it? And what are your comments about AmeriCorps?
Absolutely. I was the only thing I did political before I was went to Congress. I was a parent teacher organization president. We dealt with AmeriCorps all the time. So yeah, I'd be more willing to meet with AmeriCorps at any time. As a matter of fact, Colorado, Washington, D.C. You mean here? Here
in Duluth, at your convenience.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Thank
you.
My name is Michael Mullins. I teach in the German Studies program at the University of Minnesota Duluth. I'd like to thank you for coming today. We've been waiting for a while for you to come, and we're glad that you're here. And I think you see there's lots of interest here. Yeah, there are many other places where I could have met, but we're meeting across the way from a great investment in northeastern Minnesota in that new terminal, which I know you are now a supporter of. Yeah. Notwithstanding all of the information that you put on your slideshow, and I'm going to be referencing a percentage of gross domestic spending based on Western European countries. They all have equal expenditures, which I'm sure you're aware of. My concerns are our investment in publicly funded education, healthcare, and infrastructure. China currently is spending 12.5% of its gross domestic product in infrastructure. That would be the best comparison to the United States because they have an infrastructure that's a great state of disarray. We're spending between 2 and 3. China built 50 universities in the time that we built 50 prisons. Shifting to Western Europe, they have all of those expenditures that you just showed there, and their growth, with some exception, is probably outpacing ours by quite a bit. So my question to you is, why could Germany, for example, charge $500 per semester for tuition? Why can they give their people 6 weeks of paid vacation, full health care benefits, access on demand, which I've used with UMD students in emergency rooms? Why do they have an infrastructure that is second to none in the world, and we can't seem to do that? They're spending between 6% and 7% of their gross domestic product on infrastructure. They're fully funding healthcare and they're fully funding higher education. It doesn't seem to me that we are That would be the investment. That would bring the tax base. That would be good paying jobs. That wouldn't export taconite. We'd be creating value added jobs instead of saying raw materials overseas and importing the value added.
You hit a lot of different issues, and let me try to bring them one by one. Education, we have to invest in our future and our kids. 100%. I agree. And unfortunately, one of the things I've learned in Washington, and learning a little bit more about it, and taking a look, one of the major structures I see in Washington, D.C. is the Department of Education. I see these huge monstrosity of campuses in Washington, D.C. The average salary with benefits of a person that's working in Washington, D.C. in the Department of Education in one of their campuses there is $103,000. I've got schools in Eagle, Minnesota that are being held by flight. I don't understand why we have to spend our money. It goes to Washington, D.C., gets trapped up in Washington, and doesn't get down to our teachers in the classroom. Infrastructure, in the last 10 years, we have increased the amount of money that we spend on infrastructure by 79%.
Yes.
So we are working in infrastructure. But the problem is, you saw the bottom line, is that we borrow $1.6 trillion just in this year alone, you know, on what our money's coming from. Now, for us just to, this will kind of put in perspective, the amount of taxes that we have, or the amount of debt that we have right now, with the budget that we have right now, those of us that pay taxes, remember I said 53% of us do, we would have to increase our taxes by 60% across the board just to balance the budget. And that comes from the congressional budget. So that's what we would have to do to pay for our current situation. So, yes, do we need to prioritize? I agree with you. We have locks and dams that we need to pay attention to. We've got roads that I've driven on, had to replace tires on. So yes, we do have to pay attention to our infrastructure. I get it. So in healthcare, it's always a battle. Now, we talked about Medicare, the expenses. Healthcare is a battle. But I truly believe in the competition bringing down the costs rather than if I may please, I'd like to use an example of LASIK surgery. Hold on, ma'am. Let me just use an example of LASIK surgery. When it came out, it's never been covered under insurance. It's always been, insurance hasn't paid for it. When it came out, it was very expensive. Only very few doctors did. When you talk about health care, you have to talk about affordability, quality of care, and accessibility. Through the years, what has happened to LASIK surgery? Only a few doctors did it, and now it's gone down, where it's relatively inexpensive. Many doctors are doing it, and that is the model that I would like to see in bringing down health care costs.
Congressman, my name is Dan Olson. I am the business manager at Labor's Local 1091 here in Duluth, Minnesota. So I deal with private industries, and I'm also the president of the Superior City Council, which is right across the bay, so I deal with public employees and public issues. My question to you, being that this is a town hall meeting,
Yes, sir.
a lot of these figures may look good up there or may sound good or bad depending on who's listening and who's talking. What are you going to do for Duluth to solve some of these problems of unemployment, some of these problems of job creation, the 8th Congressional District, because the people that are in this room voted for you, whatever side of the aisle they're on, and there's an election next year, and if you're running again, these people want to know what you know, back when I was a kid, blue was Democrat, you know, Republicans were red, so everything's all horned up. But what are your plans for infrastructure that was brought up earlier, the roads that you drive when you come here, the bridges that are, you know, that are in terrible array, the airports? There's a brand new building over there that needs more funding. It's empty on the inside. We're waiting for funding to finish that building that you support. So for the people that are here from this area, what is your goal for this town
in your 8th congressional district?
Well, you're going to be very happy probably in the next couple of days about that building next door. And I'm not going to let that happen in the next couple of days. One of the big things I want to do is bring jobs here. Now, PolyMet is something I've been supporting from day one. I've held 2 roundtables with PolyMet so far. I invited every alphabet soup agency to the roundtables. I invited the delegations, I invited the tribes, and it was our first roundtable. And I have to tell you, it was quite contentious. There was a lot of back and forth. But the big thing that we identified was any problems moving forward. The EPA was there, Minnesota Congressman was there. We're talking about the issues. I am convinced that we can do this project in the most environmental friendly possible in the world.
Never been done. Never been done. Under America.
In the world. The EPA is ensuring that everybody's I's are dotted, T's are crossed. It's taken 7 years and over $32 million before even a hole is in the ground. This is 300. This gentleman that just spoke, where do you go? Here. That's at least 350 full-time jobs, high-paying jobs, just working as a mine. And then thousands of construction jobs. And then thousands of ancillary jobs along with that mine as well. Now, the good news is that's a stepping stone to the Nokomis Windmill project, which is an underground slant. That is 1,000 full-time, high-paying jobs, and heavy equipment kind of jobs as well. And then, again, the construction jobs, the people who are working at the town, people who are working at the Union Hall, there's going to be so much work you're not going to, you'll have too much. There'll be people moving into the area for the amount of jobs that these 2 projects will be bringing in. So I'm working on that on a constant basis.
My name is Barry Anderson. I'm a volunteer organizer for Minnesotans United for All Families. We're working to defeat the so-called marriage amendment that will be on the Minnesota ballot in 2012. My question today, are you willing to take action to support on a federal level the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act?
I believe marriage is between a man and a woman.
My name is Brady Nelson. I'm president of Steelworkers Local 63 out of Cocaine. Represent members at Sappy Fine Paper as well, especially the mills. I find it very disturbing when we refer to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid as entitlement programs. We've been paying for those our whole working lives. My folks, my family, my friends have paid for that. Would you support lifting the cap on income where that tax is applied?
I've had this question before, and one of the things I'd like to take a look at and see more data on is when we lift the cap. Of course, we have to pay more taxes on the cap as well, but so do the employers. You know, it's a 50-50 split. So you're also increasing the taxes associated with employers. If you talk to employers right now, they're on the headline. So I'll have to see all the data associated with that.
Take a look at how many companies are paying no taxes.
Everyone across the aisle. Everyone across the aisle, both sides, believe that there has to be a simpler, flatter, fair tax system.
No, they don't.
Matter of fact, this slide's up here right now.
Tax break for the
This is
rich
the top 1% of who gets deductions. Perfect, right here. The top 1% of the taxpayers get deductions. They are the top ones getting deductions. They're deductions that aren't afforded to a lot of residents. So we believe in it, I truly believe in a simpler, flatter, fairer system that tackles some of the deductions that only the top percentage get. So I do believe that, and I think we can accomplish that, and that was actually one of the goals of the Ryan bill.
Karen Newport, Duluthian. Karen Newport, Duluthian. And I lived and worked in Germany for 8 years, and how they handled their medical and their infrastructure was by taxing people, individuals, and corporations according to how much they make. Right now, I'm a widowed mother of 2 with mental health issues here in Duluth, looking for work. And there are no jobs out there. The only jobs that I can find are minimum wage, part-time work, and that won't support my family. Right now I'm on Social Security, and I'd like to find a job that has a livable wage, and I can support my family and maintain our benefits.
Please contact Sheldon Anderson, my district director, standing right by you. Please give him a call and see how we can help.
My name is Dwayne Timo, and I have 2 jobs. One of them is being a parent, and I was wondering, what do you intend to do about the renewable energy infrastructure? Because there are other countries like Germany and Japan that have much higher renewable energy usage than we do, and what do you intend to do with that for our area?
Big thing is if it can pay for itself, I'm all for it. It has to pay for itself.
Long term, not short term.
Yeah. Again, it's a priority. You know, what's our priority? To be honest with you, here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the oil fields opened up.
Yeah.
Drill, baby, drill. The reason why I say that is we have a lot of resources here in the United States that we can use now to get what we need later. And we have to make sure that we can use those resources available to us now. And then we talk about renewables, development, actually with a higher tax base, we can actually start putting more money into the future. Because the future is what we make it. And we can do this, but we're going to have to do it smart. Yes, sir.
Representative Cravaak, my name is Buddy Robinson. I live in Duluth.
Yes,
I have over 30 years of healthcare public policy experience. You claim that privatizing Medicare with the Ryan voucher idea or premium support, whatever you want to call it, will save the government money. However, I don't know if you're aware, the Medicare Advantage program, which has already privatized part of Medicare, has been shown by the GAO and others to be costing the government more, not less money. That's actually why the Affordable Care Act cuts out some of that wasteful subsidy to the insurance companies. Also, you mentioned Elmendorf from CBO. He had written to your budget leader, Paul Ryan, back in April, saying that this proposal would cause, when it starts in 2022, for seniors to have to pay out of pocket twice what they would have under current Medicare, about $12,000 versus $6,000. So the question is, we'd like to understand why do you support wasting billions of our tax dollars by handing it over to the insurance and drug companies?
Start off with a couple of things here in regards to, there are, like you said, not subsidies, it's direct subsidies. And the Medicare programs proposed in the Ryan plan actually came from the Clinton administration under Alice Revlin, who was the director of OMB at the time. It's actually her principles that Paul Ryan adopted in saving Medicare, which we should have done under the Clinton administration. We would have been here first, here right now. Now these are the projections under the, see, our data is conflicting because this is from the Congressional Budget Office. This is the projected cost of Medicare, of the Advantage Plan right here, and the red. 41% savings of what actually occurred. So our data conflicts.
The data doesn't conflict, but you misinterpreted the information. The reason why the actual came in below the projections was not because of choice and competition working better than expected. It happened because the originally projected rise in drug prices did not occur as much as it actually, as was projected, and fewer people actually signed up as was first projected. There's a third line that's missing from your graph, which would be if Medicare Part D had never been privatized, not given to insurance companies, and the government was negotiating prices, that would come in about half below your blue line. So if you really wanted to save money, you could have Part D and negotiate prices for drug companies, and when you have Norm Coleman's outfit send out stuff like this and have ads in the newspaper, I'm afraid you are being led by misinformation, and we wish you would get some information from places other than the Heritage Foundation.
Sir, I would love to see your data. I truly would. So if you could, I would love to see your data. We don't. So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Congressman Cravaak, my name is Teresa O'Halloran Johnson, and I, like you, am the child of someone who never went to college. Indeed, my mother did graduate from high school, even though she had to stay home to take care of the younger siblings. I'm happy that I graduated from college because now I can support my family. But I continue to stay up all night, many nights, wondering how my children will be able to go to college. I'd like to know what you will do to support public education for middle-income earners. I want to explain first that I do pay my taxes. I am a middle-income earner who does not live a lavish life. I have a 10-year-old car. Everything you see me wearing comes from a thrift store. We pay our mortgage on time every month. We've never been late. I do not have credit card debt. We've never traveled to Europe. The boat we have is a 50-year-old canoe. So that we tie down on the car. We don't have a trailer. We do not live a lavish life. We have managed to put paltry savings together that will not put a bite into my children's college education. Who will pay those taxes if they don't get an education, if they don't have good jobs? What are you doing to change that?
I agree. I've got two kids, they're 10, they're 10, they're 7.
Pell Grant, please help us.
The Pell Grants are...
I have to tell you, the Pell Grant doesn't even pay for one textbook. It's nothing. When I went to college, the Pell Grant meant something, and because my father was a small business owner, we didn't get lots and lots of aid, but I was able to pay for my education by working hard. I do have some college debt. My father, who retired from a small business, opened a new business when he retired. He doesn't golf. He plays tennis. He's 80. He's still working and paying taxes, and happy to do so because he believes that middle-income earners are the engine of our economy. What are you going to do to ensure that there are middle-income earners?
Put herself in college as well. She went through to University of Wisconsin La Crosse. She got her master's degree working through three jobs. So worked as hard as you did. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of what she did. So let me tell you a little secret about the Pell Grants. Pell Grants have increased the last 4 years by 139%. Dollar for dollar, as the Pell Grants increase, so does normal tuition on normal people.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's incorrect. I have to make one to correct that on me. That's completely incorrect.
I want to see your data.
I've given it to your office.
I tell you, give it to the big guy.
office in Washington, D.C., and I met with one of your staff there, and I commented. Brian something, it was while the Congress was not in session. It was a group from the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I went there and we talked to them about Pell Grant funding and what your office is going to do to help me go through school. I am this future you keep talking about, the future you keep talking about piling debt on, and this is the future speaking, asking why you aren't raising taxes on people who can afford it. There are people who are billions in dollars. I don't make why those people aren't paying more, because who needs billions of dollars?
Thanks, Wall Street.
The top 1% that owns 90% of the nation's wealth. We can't? Why can't we try?
Let me use an analogy for you to explain the situation. If we say tax the rich, that's the top 1%. We'll take it even more. We'll say the top 2%. And we're going to take, not only tax it, but we're going to take away all of their income. We're going to put it in a pot. The other thing is say tax big business. Okay? We're going to take Fortune 500 companies. We're going to take away all of their profits, so now they don't have any money to reinvest, create the jobs.
Let him explain.
One at a time.
We'll take that Fortune 500 company, we're going to put that in the pot, all the profits. The other thing I hear is get rid of the military. Tax the military, cut the military. Please, I'm just using an analogy, bear with me. What we can do is we can take that 20%, put that in this pile of money already we just created. Do you know what we just done? We just began to balance the budget.
That still gives more people a college education and more people health care.
You continue, if you tax one of our chief components. I have business forums all the time. I'm talking to small business owners in the 8th District of Minnesota. And the 8th District is small business. All the small towns that go through the 8th District. Nationally, it says that small businesses employ 7 out of every 10 people. I would say to you that's probably higher in the 8th District of Minnesota. So when President Obama wants to tax $250,000 that's his proposal. Here's who your taxes.
Talk is cheap.
Your tax the guy who owns the park store. Your tax
He
the
makes
guy.
$250,000 a year.
Gas station.
He makes 200. All of them. All these.
Okay, well, let me explain. Let me explain how it goes. The majority of these small business owners, 75% of these small business owners are called S corps or LLC, which means that they take their income as normal income. Right? So when you tax them, you're taxing their income, you're taxing their business as well. And what happens is, so their taxes increase. Now, the majority of these small businesses, they're on hair-free budgets already.
They make $250,000. I'm not understanding.
Next, what else? Please let me explain. You tax them, what happens? They either pass the cost on to the consumer, which is us, or they streamline their business. What does that mean?
Can I make a comment about what happens to the consumer? Currently, we have sales taxes, which is the most regressive tax. That is the tax that the consumer
State
pays.
sales tax?
The state sales tax.
Okay.
And I want to know why raising taxes on these people who can afford it. And I'm not talking about the $250,000 business owner. I am talking about the multi-million-dollar CEO.
Well, then we just talked about that. We just talked about that, creating a simpler, flatter, fair system.
Tax them before you keep having enough time. Next person in line. Next person in line.
This will be the last question. It's almost 5 o'clock. I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to speak. My name is Eric Meyer. I'm lived in Duluth for 4 years now. I'm originally from southwestern Minnesota. And I wore my patriotic t-shirt today because I am a true patriot. And maybe more than half of you in the room thinks that means that I'm like a Tea Party Republican or something like that. But I'm a patriot because I really believe in this country. I think we can be, we were the best in the world and we can be again, but we're really kind of faltering right now. So instead, a lot of people have some great points for you here. And instead of, I mean, I can echo the last one talking about education as well. But instead of telling you what I think you're doing wrong, which I have before in the Duluth News Tribune a couple times, I'll be honest. Instead of doing that, I'm going to give you an idea. I've been doing a lot of research recently about this new technology, which we actually invented in the 60s, called liquid fluoride thorium reactors. This is a kind of...
You're already way above my pay grade.
I'll explain it to you because this is the kind of idea Washington needs to know about. So it's like our nuclear plant. It was actually like our nuclear plants we have today, light water reactors. And it was actually invented by the same guy, Alvin Weinberg, back in the late 50s, and we actually had a working example in the late 60s. The reason they discontinued funding for the program is because you couldn't make nuclear bombs out of it. Other than that, it's 200 times more efficient than our current nuclear reactors, and it has, where our current ones, we burn about 1% of a uranium rod, and we throw away the rest, and it just sits and it's radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years. This process, because of how it's designed, it dissolves it in a fluoride salt instead of being compressed with water. It's cheaper, and you burn 99% of the fissile material, which is thorium, which happens to be 4 times more abundant in the Earth's crust than uranium. So we have enough stuff for this to last us for thousands of years. But because we couldn't make bombs out of this in the height of the Cold War, we totally forgot about it. But now it's starting to come back. A bunch of Chinese scientists just came to Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, which was where this was pioneered with the molten salt reactor experiment in the late 60s. So a bunch of Chinese scientists just came, toured that, downloaded all of our documents, got all of our technology. They're building them right now in China. And pretty soon, in 10 years, we're going to be buying these things from them if we don't start making them right now. Music education.
Another teacher destroying the country.
Love to hear more. Well, first off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here. I appreciate I'd like to thank everybody for coming here. I appreciate the opportunity. We have Tim Olson here. Tim, we raise your hand. This guy right here is my Duluth office guy. He's available to you at the federal building anytime during the normal working hours.
Notice before the next town hall.
I noticed you were next in line for a question.
Second to next, but yes.
What?
Second to next.
Second to next. What was your question?
My question was going to be to ask about, I'm going to look a minute, was to see if the congressman supported clean water for our people to fish in and swim in and drink, and why, if he does, why he supported House Resolution 2018 that takes us back to the old days when they were burning rivers in sick communities. And I also wanted to see if he had any other plans for legislation that could keep the environment clean and our air and water pure. And I didn't get a chance, I didn't hear it, but maybe if we would have had, I looked like
moment, ladies.
I'm with the uptake.
All right. I think this gentleman here has something to say as well.
I already actually got his comment.
40 years ago, our government took steps to clean up serious pollution by passing the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. Now states and Congress are rolling back regulations. Why? People do not live better suddenly with contamination, do they? I think it's because businesses, foreign and American, want to rein in and exploit precious natural resources. For example, the sulfide mining industry is seeking permits throughout northeastern Minnesota. I read that sulfide mines anywhere, whether in dry or wet climates, always contaminate the water for generations. Long after a mine was closed in Butte, Montana, that Superfund site is still in existence. When the government policy is to sell our resources, the citizens lose. Clean air and clean water must not be jeopardized. Clean air and water are vital to life. Knowing the threats of sulfide mining, few jobs it might create relative to the huge tourist industry it would destroy, and the watersheds it would clearly contaminate, why promote those polluting industries by dismantling environmental protections, especially when those same industries offer no example of ever having done it safely? What legacy will we leave to our children and grandchildren? As a member of Congress, I ask you, as a member of the House Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment, I ask you, change course. Demand a return to the protective standards of the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. The health of future generations of Minnesotans, of Americans, demands and depends on clean air and water.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Lori, wonderful.
Now we're going...
I'm just interested in the questions you're going to
Well,
ask.
I'm wondering who you are and what brought you here today.
Oh, my word. Do I have to give my name?
Well,
I don't think I want to have my name on the internet.
okay. But are you from Duluth, or
I
can
was
maybe
born
tell me a little bit about
I was born
yourself?
and raised in Duluth, yes. And I have been active for 30 years and working against Oberstar. And I finally got a candidate who won. It's wonderful.
And so what was it about Representative Oberstar that you weren't fond of?
Well, he was just too far away. I mean, he really wasn't interested in the district. I mean, if he was interested, if he did come back here, he only met with union people, and, you know, that's and the Democrats. I mean, he never talked to anybody. He never did anything like Cravaak is doing. I mean, it didn't exist. He didn't live here, and
How do you feel about Congressman Cravaak's wife and family living on the East Coast?
I feel that that's their private decision, and I'm not interested in getting into that at all.
Okay, let's try another issue. Let's see, you're pro-life, that's clear by your button. What do you think about the issue of folks being restricted from having signs in the room?
I think that's perfectly all right. I mean, the people who organize something are the ones that make the rules.
But buttons and shirts should be allowed.
Yeah.
That's what you feel. And then
I would have been, you know, it'd be all right to take your shirt off, except there was nothing underneath. So,
oh, you're delightful.
Do that.
Okay, living in Duluth, one of the things we care about is water, right? We care about the protection of the water. Do you support the EPA and its work to protect our water?
I really don't know too much about EPA. I think, probably due to my age, I think there's a lot of common sense that you can use on things, and that a lot of these organizations are just, I don't have the vocabulary to...
I know what that's like.
You know, to really identify. I've been a recycler before recycling was even thought of or named, because I was, of my ancestry, we were taught from the time we were little kids not to waste and, you know, to reuse and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm at the age now where I just feel that a lot of this stuff is kind of foolish, but maybe you have to teach. Nobody gets taught at home anymore, so you have to teach it in school, I guess, as they grow along. But then it's taking
So
a lot of
are you
time.
a supporter of our schools, and do you think we should
I'm
be...
not a supporter of the public schools anymore. I went to public school and I also went to private school when I was young. But in today's world, I'm not a supporter anymore because I think they're going into areas that are entirely off limits that shouldn't be touched.
How about the mining that's planned just north of Duluth in the Duluth complex? Are you aware of that?
Well, yeah, and I think that people are doing it to themselves when they refuse to work and to be able to, like this mining thing up there, they're making them jump through all kinds of hoops, and they're hurting themselves because there are no jobs. They want jobs. They don't want to pay any taxes. They want somebody to take care of them forever.
How far away do you think the mining is from Duluth?
Oh, it's up on the range. Polymet is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Do you know where the other exploration is occurring?
I'm not quite sure where that slant mine. I think that's up closer around Ely, maybe.
There's also exploration going all the way down the Duluth complex, which actually stretches past Duluth into Carleton. So the mining is being explored as close as 40 miles north of Duluth.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer, okay, in people telling the truth and letting the public know what's really going on instead of making up all these stories.
So do you think that the state should ask mining companies to tell us where they're going to drill, where they're going to explore?
Well, I think that whoever's doing it, and you know, they can be a partner with the state. We've got to work more together.
But if you were going to like buy land 40 miles north of Duluth, would you want to know if there was going to be exploration next door?
Well, yeah, and that would be a nice thing to let people know. Yeah. See, to me, that's common sense.
And it does seem like common sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of common sense that isn't being used.
And on state land, they don't tell us if there's exploration.
That's right. There's a lot of things that are not being told to people that people would be able to make better decisions if they knew about it. I'm getting old and I'm getting mouthy.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
I really appreciate your conversation. So you had some comments for Representative Cravaak. Did you get all your questions and thoughts out in this brief town hall?
Well, I didn't get any of my questions answered, if that's the question you're trying to ask me today. I certainly did get my questions out, and I think I was able to get my point across that the high cost of education is really hard on middle-income earners and middle-income families, and that if we don't do something to make sure that access to higher education for the middle-income people doesn't continue, we won't have any middle-income earners to pay the high taxes that we continue to pay. To tell you the truth, Congressman Cravaak didn't answer that question. He gave me an emotional response, which was that he agreed with me. It's hard to not agree with moms who are fighting for their children. It looks bad. But he didn't tell me what he was going to do, except to say that he supposedly has increased Pell Grant funding, but I know for a fact that Pell Grants don't cover even close to what they used to cover. The dollars are less.
Well, as a person who went through school on Pell Grants, I can pretty much understand what you're talking about. When you said that it would only cover one book, I was startled. Have they cut Pell Grants for individuals that intensely? That's amazing. I don't think people are aware.
I will say, I mean, to be honest and ethical, although I don't suppose that Representative Cravaak will be in turn, it is true that tuition has increased exponentially, and that is a concern of mine. I don't believe that federally he has a lot of control over that. I think that funding education is a key part of making sure that education is affordable.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.